Hello guys and girls, Squeezer here, and today you join me in the KMS Emden. Yes, I have the Emden, the Kriegsmarine Emden. And we've got cruiser gameplay to show for the first time on this channel actually. Well, since closed beta, a long time ago we've got cruiser gameplay. Now, we've got the Kranzy Krasvoy, the Russian cruiser over there, firing his big 180mm guns at us. And we are very long distance here, around about 9,000 metres. So we've got a bit of distance here. We've got relatively long shots going out, and trying to hit at this distance is very tricky. So while we're doing this, because there's not going to be too much action happening as we're firing away out in the distance here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Emden and a little bit about the history of this boat. Now, the KMS Emden was laid down in 1921, and she was the first cruiser to be built for the Germans after the First World War. Now, the Emden was a sort of based off the Königsberg II configuration. Sort of modelled after that, which was the sort of last class of cruiser of the Great War. So it's basically a sort of First World War era ship. The Emden, it's got an interesting, well, not an interesting history, a boring history in all honesty. It's not that interesting. The Emden spent a lot of time just sort of mooching around. After her commission in 1925, she basically made a series of world cruisers to show the flags, sort of flag of Germany in sort of post-war, the post-war world. Started taking a lot of peacekeeping missions and just, you know, sailing around the world and little bits like that, showing off the boat. After the outbreak of the Second World War, she was put into service as a mine layer. And was basically sent out to the North Sea with a number of other German ships to lay mines. On her way back, when she got back to port in, I think it was Wilshaven, to restock the mines, a British bombing raid came. I think it was some London bombers. The anti-aircraft managed, what can't I say aircraft? The anti-aircraft crews managed to knock a couple out of the air. Unfortunately, one of them ended up crashing into the Emden and made the Emden need to get some rather large repairs. So the Emden did take part in the the invasion of Norway, Operation Wurzenberg, I think, and not much happened. Then the Emden pretty much served the rest of the war as a training boat. She did sort of mooch around the Baltic fleet for a while. Was there with basically stopping the Baltic fleet from breaking out. The Soviet Baltic fleet from breaking out. So it's kind of fitting that we are fighting a Soviet ship right now. But really, there's not much of the Emden story. The Emden won the first Emden in the First World War. Actually has a bit more of a notable story than the ship that she shares a name with. But the second Emden really didn't do much in the war. Basically, she ended up as a training ship for cadets until 1945, really. In 1945, the ship participated in the evacuation of civilians and troops from East Prussia, trapped by the Soviet forces out there, and later sort of got some troops over from Norway. In 1945, an RAF bombing raid ended up basically ruining the ship, and she ended up being scuttled in Heinkeldorf. That was it, and she was dismantled in around 1949, I think it was. she was dismantled, and that's the end of the boat, really. That is the end of the Emden. There is bits of the Emden that remain in the world. One of the Emden's replacement diesel engines that was going to be fitted to her actually sits in a museum in Germany, and it's a big old engine. You know, it's a big lump of metal, but that's really it for the Emden. As I say, it's not the most interesting of ships. You know, well, it's an interesting ship, but it's not the most interesting of stories. There was, I think, something. Yeah, there was something I meant to say, but I can't remember what it is now. Anyway, we will move on, because now we're going to talk about the ship in-game, and cruisers in general. Now, as you see here, we're basically just pelting the Kranzy Korozovoy. Kranzy Korozovoy? Sorry, I forgot to put my phone on mute. Of course I did. So, we're just pounding it at long range, and not really doing much. We've switched to high explosives now because they're sort of going to cause a bit more damage. The high explosive shells have about 50mm of penetration. So as you see there, we're causing a lot of deck damage, things like that. We've got 6 guns firing at the moment, and that's one of the bonuses of this boat, is you have got a lot of the 150mm guns on board. And with the shells, as I say, you've got about 50mm of penetration with these high explosive shells, so they are very, very handy, and 6 kilograms of explosive mass in them as well, so they're very decent shells. The Panzergranate L37 blah blah blah, it doesn't work so well. You would think at this range with the armour on that ship you would cause more damage, but because they're plunging shots, you're basically going through the deck armour, and you don't tend to get that sort of detonation that you need. So it just sort of ends up basically just firing high explosives at each other and then hoping for the best. We are causing a fair bit of damage to him, it's causing a bit of damage to us as well. We've got some cruisers as well fighting us. But the Kranzy Korozovoy has, sorry, the Kranzy Kavakaz has been taken out. Now we've got some destroyers to start taking on. We are managing to get into sea and start capping out for our team. Our team has basically lost all of their smaller boats, though, because the enemy has got all their destroyers in the PT boat section. So, as usual, the game is lost. And there's nothing we can do at this point, really. I can't get into that area because I'm too slow. Our destroyers can't get in there because they're well entrenched, and that's really naval battles for you, ladies and gentlemen. It is. Especially with the larger ships, because of these islands and stuff, you can't really do much. And because all of the destroyers get into this sort of area here, none of the PT boats can actually do anything either. So right here we are basically just causing fires, just causing damage, and just taking a massive beating. One of the things cruisers can do is just take an enormous amount of damage. The Russian cruiser died because it didn't have a fire extinguisher. Yeah, passed an FPE again. You know, there's still problems with that, and people have just sort of calmed down about the situation, but it is still a massive issue, especially in ships. You know, naval ships do need fire prevention equipment, and it is ridiculous that they don't have it. Anyway, we are firing our big guns at these destroyers, and when we get some hits, you cause an awful lot of damage to the enemy ships. With your secondaries as well, it is very handy. You just basically annihilate anything that comes close to you. As you can see here, we are just causing huge amounts of damage to that destroyer in the distance. As our guns reload again, we're firing off another salvo. And we've basically taken out 4 compartments of the ship, and the ship is not looking very good at the moment. Now, they've removed the system where you took out 3 compartments and the enemy ship dies now, so you have to take out pretty much all the compartments, it seems. But we're going behind rocks now, and that ship is going to become safe. Fire off one last salvo, straight to the bow of the ship, and there we go. We get a nice hit. So I think it's 4 compartments now need to be taken out and the ship dies or something, but basically we've just annihilated that ship. And that's the thing that cruisers can do, is if you do get into a firefight, you are pretty much going to win. Luckily, a good thing about the Emden is the ammunition does sit quite low in her, and she's also got some good belt armour too. The ammunition's relatively well protected, especially from high explosive shells. You know, with a destroyer, it's about 20mm of penetration, which won't go through your armour generally. So you are pretty safe there. No idea how they're going to cause more damage. A direct hit to the side of the ship, but oh well. As you see now, the damage model is coming up. This is one of the things I do actually enjoy looking at, is just how damaged the boat gets. It does look fantastic, the damage model system in the game. Things like your lifeboats going flying and big holes in your smokestacks and stuff like that. It looks great. Now our secondaries are opening up, and our anti-aircraft guns have opened up. So we've got a PT boat over there, by the looks of it, that just got absolutely annihilated by something. And we've also got an enemy ship coming to the side of us. So, secondaries on the ship, there are lots of secondaries. You've got quite a few anti-aircraft weapons on board, which does help an awful lot. As you see, our secondaries have just opened up on this destroyer. Now, that is the PR-7, Project 7Y, the Russian destroyer anyway. So relatively big guns on her, but we've got bigger guns. With close range, all of our secondaries are opening up, and our main guns are going to open up too. And we're going to try for that ammo hit as well. So as you see here, I'm just aiming for the front of the ship, and we just hit the ammunition racks, and of course no damage, which is just perfect. Just what you expect. Now, torpedoes probably have been launched at us, so we're probably not going to survive too much longer. We finally get that ammunition hit, and all is good. Another destroyer off in the distance. Another one of the Russian destroyers, the what's it called? I can't remember the name right now. I can't remember the name of that destroyer. But anyway, the Russian destroyer out there has been set on fire by a tribal. We're causing massive amounts of damage to the France, I think it is, over there. But a torpedo hits us. The back section of our ship decides to float off, and we are done for. So we'll just pause there for a second and just switch to the view and actually look at the damage model in action here, and it just looks fantastic. You know, it is a very cool damage model. Well, it would be if we actually... There we go, that's what I wanted to do. So as you see, the actual whole rear of our ship has gone, and we are just completely sinking. And the great thing is you actually have the compartments in there as well. Just, you know, all the different compartments. It is just a very cool looking thing when you sort of have a snoop around inside these ships. The Emden is a pretty strong bloody boat though. As you saw, 3 kills, 1 assist, sorry, 3 kills, 1 air target destroyed and 1 cap. That's pretty much all we could do in this game, and we did all we could do in there. So with that, we're going to head to the post-battle screen results and finish up the video. Okay, and here we are in the post-battle results screen. As you can see, we lost that game, so we ended up with 92 hits on the enemy. 92 hits, which gave us 87 lions. Yeah, that works out, I'm sure. I mean, even on a loss, I think there should be a little bit more than that. So 3 naval targets destroyed, and of course this is premium, so 7,900 lions. If we were running without free repair for the Emden, that would have been a massive loss game. And some bastards just started drilling outside, of course. Thank you. So yeah, massive loss there for the game. I mean, look, we finished second in our team, and didn't really do much. We basically managed to cap 1 zone. That's one of the better maps for the cruisers. And we've managed to get a little bit closer to the new shell unlock. But yeah, it's really not... Cruiser gameplay is really not that interesting. It could be if there was more long-range targets, and it's kind of fun when you get close to the action, like I did there when the destroyers came in. You know, it's just basically you're basically this floating pillbox. But the problem is there's just it's not very engaging. It takes forever for you to die usually, and sorry if you can hear that. And it's basically just really, really not that interesting sometimes. We tried our best for the team there. I mean, we capped a zone and we were holding it. We still lost, though, because the enemy team had more destroyers. I mean, if you look at the amount of kills the enemy team had, there was one guy that had 8 kills on our team, 9 kills on the enemy team, 6, 3, 5, 2, you know, high amount of kills, you know. And when you have that sort of wonkiness, and hey, Flying Kiwi, by the way, person I know from Discord and Ash. Anyway, yeah, it's just very frustrating and it's just very imbalanced. If there was longer range shots and things like that, and longer range gunnery felt better, it would be a little bit better for the game. But currently, it's sort of not like that, unfortunately. All right, guys. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Yeah, a bit of a downer really for the gameplay of cruisers, but they are still bloody cool. Before we go, we'll just go to the hangar and I'll just quickly show you the Emden from the outside, because it's a beautiful ship, the Emden. The KMS Emden. It's just, look at this glorious boat. It's the Emden, it sort of doesn't look cruisery. It looks like a big destroyer to me. It doesn't have that sort of cruiser look to me, which is, cruisers should be tall. The Emden is quite a short ship, and that really helps it because it's got a very low profile. The 150mm guns are very, very handy. You will cause a lot of damage, and you've got a lot of them. When you're firing a full broadside, you've got six shells going off with those big guns. Then you have your secondaries as well with 105s, and there's plenty of AA defense too. As you saw, I took out a plane, I think, during that game. Didn't even realize I took it out. But yeah, it is an absolutely gorgeous boat. I just wish that aiming was a little bit more intuitive. It just doesn't feel quite right at the moment still for these big boats. Alright guys, well until next time, this is me, Screezilla, out. Bye bye.